Greetings, friends. It's me, Wayman. Welcome to another episode of the Book of Judges for Dummies. And we have our beer, because why? Every time we talk about religion, sex, or politics, you should be drinking beer. I'm an agnostic, so I'm not a part of any theological group, denomination, and we're going through the text of Judges. And I really love Hebrew literature, and I love studying religious literature. So I've read quite a bit, ancient Near Eastern texts, and it's a hobby of mine. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at Judges 6 to 8. It's the Gideon cycle. And what's interesting about this is before we said we were dealing with pro-monarch views, meaning the writer was saying, or writers was saying, look, the people that we have are a bunch of putzes. The tribes can't get together and make a decision on anything, and everything is total chaos. But hearing Gideon, starting back in Judges 5 with the Song of Deborah, the Holy War hymn that we talked about, even though it was in with pro-monarch texts, we're now starting to get pictures of anti-monarch, meaning man cannot do it himself. And Gideon is an example of that. Here, the weaknesses of man are magnified. Gideon ends up having to have a bunch of signs to make sure what he was doing was right, which is the right thing to do. I would have done the same thing. Adonai, or the divine, tells him to cast out the altar of Baal. He does it at night instead of in the day. It's not brave. He ends up needing more proof to go to battle, and he gets troops. You know, some scholars say that the troops he picked, the 300, were heroes and that they'd be ready because the way they drank water out of the river. But some scholars say, nah, that's not the case. He got a bunch of wimps. They didn't do nothing. They just held pitchers with lamps inside of them. With the other hand, they blew with the trumpet. They didn't need their swords. And when the enemy went on the run, everybody else came in and helped them out. So you get that. Then you get a different story, possibly by a different author, of Gideon the charismatic leader. So this is the thing about epic, and this is going to be an introduction video to Gideon, the Gideon cycle. You had tribal stories, tribal traditions, different time periods, Deuteronomistic redactions, different time periods. All of this, these people respected the literature, respected what each other had. Stories of heroes, of gods and men, and they put it together to form the Hebrew epic of who they were, both the good and the bad. So, here you have different priestly castes doling out dirt and mudslinging within the literature. And a lot of times with Hebrew literature, it's not always as it appears to be. They could be saying one thing in the text, but meaning something else politically. And on top of all of that, on top of all the traditions and everything, something could be going on in the Deuteronomistic society, meaning at the time of even Josiah, when maybe some of the last redactions were made, maybe just before the Babylonian exile, when some of these redactions were made. They could be making a statement about that historical period using heroes of old. So we're going to look at some of that, and we're going to look at some ideas about messengers of the divine. Who are they? Why do some of these stories sound all mixed up? Why are some of these stories seemingly not in a time sequence? Even in epics like the Iliad, sometimes the storylines weren't always dealing with the time. The time sequence wasn't as important as the message or the moral issues that they were trying to portray, or it didn't mesh with the motif of the storyline, and so that ended up being more important than actually following a strict timeline of a historical event. So we'll get into some of that. And the texts of Samuel are just ridden with this. You take Masoretic text, compare it to the LXX, compared to even the Dead Sea Scrolls. And Samuel is just chaos. All these traditions mesh in. A lot of stuff left out, a lot of stuff put in. Does not mean the texts are corrupt though. All it means is some traditions were preserved in some texts, and in some traditions they were not. And maybe for political and theological reasons, depending on where they originated from. So a lot of times readers will say, hey, look, Dead Sea Scroll Judges 6-8 says this. These sections are left out in the MT. Or the LXX, Septuagint, it's different from the Dead Sea Scroll Judges. But I don't have a problem with that. We'll look at them all, maybe. And it's just the way things were done. It's just how the priestly caste who are writing these texts were able to compose the epic. And then the final redaction happened to where you get stories of heroes, stories of individual tribes, stories of chaos, all put together to form a picture of a nation and how they progressed through that time period. And believe me, as we get through Judges and maybe into Samuel, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse with the textual criticism, because there's a lot of traditions intermeshed and interwoven, as we said. So hopefully, in the next video, we're going to look at the call of Gideon. What was that all about? Who was the messenger? There's an oracle against the nation again, like we've seen in Judges 3, I believe. And we'll look at angels eating food. Or, I don't like to use angels. It's a New Testament idea. Messengers eating food, because it's messenger in Hebrew. What was that? Was it a test? Can the divine beings eat the foods of men? And how does that work? That's a really interesting topic. And also the competition between the Yahweh cult and the Baal cults, and how Gideon's father cleverly saves Gideon's life by a little speech he gives and a little saying he gives, which worked brilliantly. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, friends, and remember, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking.